We're studying through the Bible about dreams, hypnosis, visitations, and visions in the Bible. This has been on my heart for about 20 years to do something like this, and now we're doing it. And this is our fourth class on dreams, hypnosis, visitations, and visions. Until we receive the Word of God, God has dealt with mankind in many different ways. He dealt with man by showing him the creation, and he showed himself to mankind. Marilyn and I watched the ocean waves. We saw the things in the ocean. And everything down under the ocean, under the water, is just like something on top of on land. They got fleas down there and lice. They got dogs. They got spiders. They got scorpion-looking things. Everything that walks around here on the earth is down there also. The elephants of the deep, or the whales and the dolphins and the killer whales, the walruses, all of these things are magnificent. And it should teach us that there is a creator. We looked at the earth as it was when God created it in eternity past. God, in His unpreventable progress and eternal purpose, it's going to happen. But God foresees everything. Before He ever created one thing in the world, material or physical or spiritual, He had us in His mind. And He wrote our names down in the Lamb's Book of Life. We look at all of this revelation of Himself through His creation. And then He puts in every man the knowledge that there is a God. You have to thwart that. You have to smother it to become an atheist or anything else. There is a God. And then through His prophets and by specific revelation and special revelation, He made known to the prophets of old, through hypnosis, through dreams, through visions, His plans. In eternity past, God created the angels and the spirits. He created then the physical universe. He put Lucifer over it. Lucifer rebelled against God. He destroyed it. He destroyed it. Many of my students all over the world, Donald Grewar, he just is thrilled with our study in the book of Genesis. Different people all over, different places, just are thrilled with it. Now, I have said this before in times past, but God, in His unpreventable progress, allowed Satan to destroy the earth and the living animals and plants on it. Because of that, we have oil deposits, what we call fossil fuel, from vegetable and animal life. When Noah built the ark, this is in eternity past when the earth was destroyed. God placed man upon the earth. He basically took Satan's, Lucifer's place. Man sinned, and we have personal death and weeds, which we have all problem with. Man lived in a state of conscience, do good and offer blood sacrifice. They were wicked, and God brought a universal flood. But before He brought the flood, I said this many times in years past, He told Noah to build an ark. That big boat, big container. And it was made out of wood, shittim wood, gopher wood. And what did He do? How did He make it waterproof? He took pitch, or bitumen, or tar, and covered it all with tar. Where did the tar come from? The tar came from back in eternity past, with the oil and animal deposits back there. That's where it came from. The destruction between Genesis 1 and 1 and Genesis 1 and 2 really happened. We got a lot of physical evidence to tell us that. Now we come on up and we see God's unpreventable progress and His eternal purpose working in men's lives. We've studied so far Adam, how that He put Adam in a hypnotic trance, and He took from Adam, He took woman. And He gave her unto him. And then Satan led them into temptation. The man did not sin, tempted directly by Satan or Lucifer. But the woman did. And the man followed suit, knowingly, full known what would happen to him. And death would become. They would begin to see the process of aging and dying, and they would see their firstborn son murder his brother. So the full fruition of what would happen. We come on down. We have Abraham called out. We have Isaac. We have Rebekah. We have Abraham going down to Egypt. We have a little maiden down there, the daughter of Pharaoh, Hagar, used as a slave by Sarah, and then given to her husband as a wife, as a concubine. And she has a child, and God visits her. And says that I'm going to protect that child and I'm going to bring him through. And those people are still here. Ishmael's descendants are still in the world today, people. And yet she was turned loose on the desert alone and ran out of water and food. But God provided, didn't He? We have Abraham having Isaac. Isaac was not a man after God's heart. His wife, Rebekah, had to step in and cause him to bless the right man, which was Jacob. And then Jacob had to run because Esau wanted to kill him. Esau wasn't bigger than Jacob. He was vicious and mean and a murderer, just like what happened with Cain. Cain slew Abel. Esau wanted to slay Jacob. Esau hated God's promises and despised his birthright, and God said that in several places in the Bible. And now we have God's man Jacob. And Jacob fled and went into the place and the dwelling of in Haran of Laban. And Laban was a snake in the grass too. He was a scoundrel. He cheated Jacob every way he could. Jacob fell in love with Rachel, and he married off his other daughter instead. Slipped him in while Jacob was drunk in the tent with him. Let's read in here in the 29th chapter and look at some of this. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the sons of the east, the sons of the rising of the sun. And he looked and he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it. For from that well they watered the flocks. Now the stone at the mouth of the well was very, very large and huge. Now remember, God, before this happened here, what Jacob did with his mother, Rebekah, God said Rebekah was right. You are my man. You are the one that I'm going to bless. And he saw angels ascending and descending on a ladder, stairway to heaven and back. And he said, you're my man. Now go your way. And Jacob called that place the house of God. And while all the flocks were gathered there, they would then roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. This is the big rock, people. And Jacob said to them, my brothers, where are you from? And they said, "We are from Haran." And he said then, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know him." And he said to them, "It is well, is it well with him?" And they said, "Yeah, he's okay. Behold, Rachel, his daughter, is coming here with the sheep." Rachel means lamb. Means little ewe lamb, Rachel. And he said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered and watered, sheep, and go to pasture them." And they said, "We cannot until the flocks are gathered and they roll the stone from the mouth of the well, then we can water the sheep." And while he was still speaking with them, Rachel come with her father's sheep, and she was a shepherdess. And it came about when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban and mother's, and that Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the sheep of the well, and watered the flock of Laban and his mother's brother. Then Jacob kept on kissing Rachel, and he lifted up his voice and he kept on weeping. And Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father, and he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So it came about when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him, and he kept on kissing him, and he brought him to his house, and then he related to Laban all of these things. And Laban said to him, "Surely you are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." And he stayed with him for a month. You have to remember the Bible months were lunar, not solar. Lunar, not solar. So they're shorter months, and shorter years too, by the way. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages are, or what your wages are to be." Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Now, according to the book of Jasher, these are twin girls, but the one born first is Leah. And Leah's eyes were, now it says in many translations that Leah's eyes were weak. That's not what it says. Leah probably had blue eyes or hazel eyes or something, and her eyes made people weak. The men, when they saw her beautiful eyes, they would just, their knees would buckle. Her eyes weren't weak, but her eyes made men weak. Now, back in these days, things were a lot different than they are today. A woman was very chaste. She hid her beauty except for her eyes. She was veiled. And this girl's eyes were beautiful. Her eyes made people weak. Now, in my family, a long time ago, there was one of my relatives called Man Afraid of His Horses. It's kind of like this word Leah here, where her eyes were weak. Man Afraid of His Horses was not afraid of his horses. But people, when they saw his horses with his designs and painted and arrayed for war, when they saw his horses in battle, they were afraid. They were afraid. It's not that Leah's eyes were weak, but when the people saw Leah's eyes, they became weak. Crazy, or not Crazy Horse, but Man Afraid of His Horses was not afraid of his horses. But the people who saw his horses were afraid that he was behind them somewhere. They would usually take more than one horse to battle. And he would take a herd of his horses, and they were all painted with the designs of him. What will your wages be? And now Laban had two daughters, and the name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel, and Leah's eyes were made people weak. But Rachel was beautiful in every form and way. She had pretty eyes, She had a pretty form. Now, a lot of these guys back there, they liked well-endowed, heavy women. Because a woman, if she was very plump, she was probably healthy because she was getting enough. And a skinny little gal might be sick. So maybe she was a little on the heavy side. I don't know. They didn't look for hourglass figures like the world, like Hollywood does. You know, if you don't look like a Hollywood guy or girl, there's nothing wrong with you. That's who you are. Now Jacob loved Rachel. And he said, I will serve you for 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. 7 years of his life he was going to give. I'm going to tell you something. I gave 22 years of my life for my Maryland. 22 years of my life on the farm. Working and working and working, trying to hold things together. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to someone, other man. Stay with me, okay? She's going to be yours. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they just seemed like a few days because he loved her so much. Now, you have to realize this girl is pretty young. When he met her, she might have been 8 or 9 years old. Because women got married very young back then, didn't they? Look at Rebecca. Most of the Bible scholars think that she was probably 9 to 10 years old, or 8 to 10 years old when she married. She was still nursing her nursemaid, which her nursemaid was sitting with her. And we know a lot of times that some of these people nursed until they were 10 or 12 years old because they thought that would give them extra strength. And if a person was wealthy or well-to-do, they had a nursemaid up until they're older, so they could stay healthy. And so Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is completed, that I may go have sexual relationships with her. And Laban gathered all of the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came about in the evening that he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him. And Jacob went in and had sexual relationship with her. Now I want to draw you a picture. Here is Laban. Now these women are absolutely covered up. You can't see them. Their faces are covered and they're quiet. And he takes this girl and puts her in a tent, and he shoves Jacob in the tent with her. And Jacob's pretty drunk. But he goes in there. He doesn't look at her face. He unclothes her and has relationships with her. And then when he wakes up in the morning, we're going to find out what happens. And Laban gathered all the men of the place together and made a feast, and now came about, and they took his daughter Leah and brought her unto him, and Jacob went into her, had sexual relationships, and they became one. And Laban also gave his maid Zilpah and his daughter Leah as a maid. He gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maidservant. And it came about in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I have served with you? And why then have you deceived me? But Laban said, oh, now he quotes the laws of Hammurabi. Oh, it is not the practice of our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Complete the bridal week for this one. In other words, you've got to stay with her. You've got to have sexual relationships with her every night for a whole week. Women wanted their men. Women wanted their men because they wanted children. The children would take care of them. Complete the bridal week of this time, or this one, and we will give you the other also for the service which you shall serve with me for another 7 years. In other words, 14 years now. I got you for 14 years. That's almost a decade and a half that he's going to get out of him for 2 women. Except he's going to end up getting 4. And Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave his daughter Rachel as his wife. And Laban also gave his maid Bilhah and his daughter Rachel as her maid. And so Jacob had relationships, sexual relationships with Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah. This was the one he wanted. He only wanted one woman. He didn't want all these others. And he served with Laban for another 7 years. Now the Lord saw, Jehovah saw that Leah was unloved. And he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. God of the underdog. The God of the underdog. God always looks after the underdog, the one that's unloved and mistreated. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name See a son, Reuben. And he said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and because the Lord has heard I am unloved, he has therefore given me another son also, and I will name him One Who Hears, Simeon. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, now the last time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne to him 3 sons. Therefore she called his name Levi, which means attached. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise God, Jehovah. Therefore she called him Praise Jehovah, Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Now Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children. I can assure you she didn't have to think about this much. 1, 2, 3, 4 sons her sister had borne. But God is the God of the underdog. And when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and she said to Jacob, give me children, or I'll die. And Jacob's anger burned against Rachel. Now I'm going to tell you something. He was with Leah because he had to be. He was with Rachel because he wanted to be. And he put as much, probably 10 times more seed in Rachel's womb than he did Leah's. Except Leah was fertile and Rachel was not. And Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Have I not put seed in you? Have I not done this over and over again? Is it my fault? And she said, here is my handmaid, Bilhah. Have sexual relationships with her that she may bear on my knees, that though here I may have children through her. I may have children. She gave him to her and Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob had a sexual relationship with Bilhah caught seed and bore her son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me, and indeed heard my voice, and has given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Now Dan means judged. God has judged, and she has given me a son. So here now we have Dan. And we're going to find out that that Jacob ended up having 13 children.
Oh.
And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. So Jacob said, with mighty wrestlings, so Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have indeed prevailed, and she named him to wrestle, or Naphtali. Then, or when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to her as Jacob as a wife. Now we have dripping, and we have soft and luscious in these two. That's what their names mean. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "How fortunate." So she named him Gad. That means to be happy or fortunate and blessed. For a troop cometh. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I, for women will call me happy." And she named him Asher. That means to bless or to be happy. Now in the days that wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field. Reuben, that's his son. Mandrakes is an aphrodisiac. It's an aphrodisiac. And he brought them to his mother, Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "It is a small matter for you to take my husband. And would you take my son's mandrakes also?" So Rachel said, "Therefore he may be with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. I want him to be sexually aroused when he comes to me, so we'll have more children." And they wanted the affection. And when Jacob came in from the field in the evening, then Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay down with her that night. And God gave heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, "God has given me wages, because I gave my handmaid to my husband." So she named him Wages, or Issachar. And Leah conceived again and bore a sixth son to Jacob. And Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my husband will dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she named him Zebulun, which means to cohabit, to live with, to share the bed with. And afterward she bore a daughter. And they named her Dan, or Dinah. Dinah is a feminine form of Dan, which means to judge. God has judged or vindicated me. And God remembered Rachel. And God gave heed to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son, and said, "God has taken away all my reproach." And she named him Joseph. Joseph means to be uncomfortable. Joseph means to succeed and to have success. And may the Lord give me another son. That came about when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. And give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me depart, for you yourself know my service, which I have rendered to you." But Laban said to him, "If it now pleases you, stay with me. I have conjured up, and I have divined, I have sought what we might call a Ouija board or something, that the Lord has blessed me on your account. I've consorted with spirits," he said, "and they have told me that your God is blessing me because of you." And he continued, he says, "Name your wages, and I will give it." But he said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how you cattle have fared with me." Now Jacob was a cowboy and a shepherd and a guard of the herds, just like he was with his father, Isaac. "For you had a little before I came, and it has increased to a multitude. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. Now, what I shall provide for my own household, how shall I provide for my own household also? And he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. You don't have to give me anything. If you'll do this one thing for me, I will again pasture and keep your flocks. Let me pass through your entire flock today and remove from every speckled and spotted sheep. Now, these were like 1% or 2%. This is like the black sheep. Now, how many black sheep are born to a herd, Marilyn?
1,000.
1 in 1,000. So now we're looking at this. This is 1 in 1,000. Speckled and spotted sheep, and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats. And such shall be my own wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come concerning my wages. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and the black among the lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen. Old Laban says, now, these are all yours, just like I said now. And Laban says, good. Let it be according to your word. A new contract. So he removed on that day the striped and the spotted and the male goats and all the speckled and spotted female goats and everyone with white on it and all the black ones among the sheep, 1 in 1,000, and gave them to the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar, like these poplar trees out here, remember? Almond and plane trees, and peeled white strips on them, and exposing the white which was in the rods. Then he set the rods by which it was peeled in front of the flocks and the gutters, and even the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, and they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth striped and speckled and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the striped and all the black in the front flock of Laban, and he put his own herds apart, but not put them with Laban's flock. Moreover, it came about that whenever the stronger of the flock were mating, that Jacob would place the rods right in the side of the flock and the gutters, and they might mate by the rods. And this is an unusual thing. What was this? What happened here? We don't really know. But when the flock was feeble and did not put them in, and so the feebler were Laban's and the stronger were Jacob's. So the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks and female and male servants and camels and donkeys. And Jacob heard the words of Laban, son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that is our father's, and from what belonged to our father he has made all of his wealth. And Jacob saw the attitude of Laban, and behold, it was not friendly toward him as it was before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, in a hypnotic trance, in a dream, in a vision, or in a visitation, whatever you want to call it, the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. As I was when you left your father's house and I met you there where your head was on that rock, that stone, I'm going to be with you from now on, Jacob. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flocks in the field. And he said to them, I see your father's attitude, that it is not friendly toward me as formerly, but God of my father has been with me. He has visited me. I've had a vision. I've had a hypnotic trance. I had special revelation. And you know that I've served your father with all my strength, and your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, God did not allow him to hurt me. If he spoke thus, the speckled shall be your wages. Then all the flock brought forth speckled, and if he spoke thus, the striped shall be your wages, and all the flock brought forth striped. Thus God has taken away from your father's livestock and given them to me. And it came about in the time when the flocks were mating, that I lifted up my eyes, and I saw in a dream another vision, another hypnotic trance. Behold, the male goats which were mating were striped and speckled and mottled. In this hypnosis, in this hypnotic dream, God tells him, and the angel of the Lord said to me in the hypnotic trance, Jacob, I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes now and see all the male goats were mating are striped and speckled and mottled, and I have seen all that Laban has done to you. And I am the God of Bethel, the God of that stone where I met you before. I'm the same one. I told you I was going to take care of you. Where you anointed the pillar, where you made vows to me, now arise, leave this land and return to the land of your birth. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, do we still have any portion of inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has entirely consumed our purchase price. In other words, he's enjoyed it all. He's consumed it with women and gambling and whatever. He threw all of their purchase price away. Surely all the wealth which God has taken from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then do whatever God has told you to do. And Jacob arose and put his children and his wives upon camels. And he drove all his livestock and all of his property which he had gathered, and he acquired the livestock, and he had gathered in Padam Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole the household idols which were in her father's house. Now she wants to make sure that these household idols are going to protect her. Because Laban used to consort with them. He used to divine with them. So she thought they had power in it. She was raised that way. She was a pagan, basically. And Jacob deceived Laban the Syrian by not telling him that he was fleeing. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose and crossed the Euphrates River, and set his face toward all the hill country of Gilead. And when it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, they took his kinsmen with him. He took an army with him. And at a distance of 7 days' journey, he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. Now, these idols that Rachel had taken would give Jacob the right of heirship over her family. These things represented that he was going to become the patriarch. Now, Jacob was already going to become the patriarch in God's eyes, but she wanted him to be the patriarch under the laws of Hammurabi. And these idols, these teraphim, were probably idols of Noah and their ancestors. They kept consorting with their ancestors and asking them to bless them. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream, in a hypnotic trance. God's cutting him off at the pass now, and said to be careful what you speak to Jacob, either good or bad. I'm going to kill you. And Laban caught up with Jacob. And now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and with Laban and his kinsmen camped on the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives with the sword? Why did you flee so secretly and deceive me and did not tell me? I mean, this is a liar calling him a liar and a cheat. This is a liar and a cheat calling Jacob a liar and a cheat. So that I might have sent you away with joy and with songs and with timbrel and with, in other words, the big band. This is a big lie, by the way. And did not allow me to kiss my son and my daughters. Did he really have any sons? He's talking about his grandchildren. These are Jacob's sons. Now that you've done so foolishly, it is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night in a dream. Be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob, or else. And now you have indeed gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house, but why did you steal my gods? Why did you steal my gods? Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, lest you would take your daughters from me by force. The one with whom you find the gods, the idols, shall not live in the presence of our kinsmen. Point out what is yours among my belongings and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the family idols. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two maids, and he did not find them. Then he went into Leah's tent, and he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle, and she sat upon that saddle. And Laban felt through all the tent, but he did not find them. And she said to her father, let me not, my lord, be angry that I cannot rise from before you, for the manner of women is upon me. In other words, I'm on my monthly time. So he searched, but did not find the household idol. So Jacob became angry and contended with Laban. And Laban answered and said to and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Though you have felt through all my goods, what have you found in all of have you found your household gods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that we may decide between us two. And these 20 years have I not been with you, and your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flocks. That which is torn by beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. You required it of my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. And thus I was by day, the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years have I been in your house. I have served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac, had not been for me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, and he has rendered judgment this night. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. And all that you see is mine. What can I do this day to these daughters or to these children whom they have borne? Now come and let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Then Jacob took a stone, and he set a pillar upon it. And Jacob said to the kinsmen, gather stones. And so they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap of stones, this monument, this pillar. Now Laban called it Jegah Shahadatha, but Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me in this day, and therefore it was named Gilead. And it's also Mizpah in Hebrew, like the Mizpah Hotel. And at Mizpah, for he said, may the Lord watch between you and me, and when we were absent from one another. And if you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set between you and me. This is a heap, is a witness. and the pillar is a witness, and that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and that you will not pass by this heap or this pillar to me for harm. And God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain, and called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate, and the meal spent the night on the mountain. And early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. What a story.
That is
What a
quite,
story of providence.
that's,
Visions and visions. God even gave a vision, hypnotic trance to Laban, didn't he? Don't you mess with him or I'll kill you. And the fear of Isaac was the fear of Laban. And Jacob began to trust God more and more and more. He always tried to do the right thing because he wanted the blessing of God. If you want the blessing of God and protection of God, you can have it. God is still there. The God of Jacob, the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, the God of Noah, the God of Adam, the God of Paul, and the God of Peter. And Jesus, our Savior, is with you today. Our Father, we send this message out that it might honor and glorify you in every way. I pray for those out there that you've given me to teach and to love, that you touch their hearts with your word and show them how much you can do for them. That if you were with Jacob through all the trouble that he had, that you can be with them through all the troubles in this life. And Father, if there's one out there lost and doesn't know you, I pray that you convict their heart of sin, righteousness, and judgment to come, that they'll call upon you and beg you for mercy and learn to love you.